already. So I went different place. Instead of 1 kilometer, I went perhaps 5 kilometers, but I wasn't apprehended. I wasn't stopped. Those that were stopped, of course, they were immediately taken back. And then I knocked on the door and they let me in. I told them, look, let me in for just a 1 day. And I want to find out what's going to happen in the town. So they took me to the barn, and there was a large pile of straw. They dug a tunnel on the bottom. I went into the tunnel. They covered it with straw. And before they covered it, I asked them, please, 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 go to town during the day and find out what's happening and let me know. And that's exactly what they did. I heard shooting all day because I was only 1.5 kilometers from the mass grave. There was on the edge of town, there was a gravel pit where they were taking gravel to build the roads, because none of the roads at that point in time were asphalt. It was all gravel. So they had a prepared pit already. They just had to level it off. The Jews that did not escape were taken to public school, which was right next to the gravel pit. From there, 10 or 20 at a time were taken to the gravel pit. They laid a plank across the gravel pit, and they were shot, 10, 20 at a time. Almost all the shooting was done by the collaborative police. We know of only one Jew who was shot by a Gestapo man. And before they went on the plank, they had to undress, completely undress. And the population of the town and perhaps surrounding villages came, and they watched it like this was a movie, like this was a show. And as the police and the Germans were throwing their clothes, their boots, their shoes, their coats, and etc., they were fighting over it. And they knew what they were doing, because those Jews that were middle class, upper class, lower class had gold. Our parents did not trust paper money, because during World War I, as the countries changed, so did the money, and eventually the money was paper. So most of the Jews, if they had any saving, they didn't trust the bank either. It was in gold coins. And that's what they were fighting for. They needed the shoes too, they wanted, and the clothes, but most important, they searched and they found gold. Small children and toddlers were not shot. To save bullets, they were hit on the head with the butts of the rifles and thrown alive or half alive into the pit. I am not going to describe any more of the atrocities, because whoever's going to watch it will have nightmares just like I do. But you can imagine what was going on. Now, at the end of the day, the Nazis kept meticulous records. By the way, everything, not everything, but most what we know about the Holocaust in general throughout Europe is not so much from the survivors as it is from the German files, from the documents. So they realized, they knew exactly how many Jews were in Jodi, and they realized that only half of the population, a little more than half of the population, were murdered. So they knew exactly how many escaped, more or less. They put a bounty on the heads of the Jews that escaped. 1 kilogram of salt to anyone who would bring a Jew to the gravel pit. That's all I was worth at that time, 1 kilogram of salt. And the next day business was good. Many were captured. they weren't as lucky to find a hiding place as I was. And now it's a different story. Those that were originally shot the first day, they all committed the same crime. They were born Jewish. However, those that were now captured, they committed a second unforgivable crime. They did not obey the Nazi war machine, or I should rather say the Nazi death machine. For this, they were tortured first and then given the luxury to die. My brother went to where he was supposed to be. He stayed there a couple of days, and they asked him to go because it was very dangerous. Quite a few Jews were captured next door. My sister had the same problem. She stayed about a week, and then they told her to go. But they survived. They went. My brother went to another ghetto, which was about 30 kilometers away, where they were not exterminating the Jewish population yet. My sister, when she was told to go, the men told her, look, here's a river. Go alongside the river. You have about 10 kilometers. And there was a ghetto. And go at night, try to sneak into the ghetto. And you have some relatives there or friends, and they'll try to help you. But this story can only happen in Hollywood. So my sister walked and walked and walked, perhaps 4 or 5 hours. She became very, very thirsty. But she was smart enough not to eat the snow. It was very, very cold. She saw a large home, a large house, with lights on. And this was around midnight already, past midnight. She decided she's going to trade her life for a glass of water. She knocked on the door, and she said, can I have a glass of water? The woman asked her, who are you? She said, I'm an escapee from Jodi, from the town. She said, come in the house. She came into the house. The woman gave her a glass of milk and a slice of bread. And she told her, go on the oven. The house had a large oven where you bake bread. Lay down and sleep. And you'll go to the ghetto tomorrow. So she lay down. And she was asleep until 4 p.m., approximately. And then she woke up. A man woke her up. He was standing over her. She said, who are you? What is your name? She said, my name is Tanya Silverman. Who was your father? My father's Otto Silverman. Oh, that's the one that had the mills? He says, I brought some material to be produced in your father's factory, and it got lost. And your father asked me what was the value of it. And I told him. He didn't question me, he didn't ask for anything to prove it. He paid me. Your father was a very honest man. Don't go to the ghetto. But if they capture you while sneaking in, they'll immediately torture you, and then give you the luxury to die. Stay with us, and we'll see what happens. 3 weeks after the day of the massacre, placards came in our town, in the marketplace, that all the Jews can return, and there will be no more shooting. I found my father, and we were together, 2 of us. So we immediately went out to look for my sister. We knew where she went originally, and we couldn't find her. For 3 days, this went on for 3 days, we went out. Then we decided that we're going to go into town, to our house. Our house was still there. And we'll risk our life. We knew it was a trap by the Germans. But it was very important to find my sister, because she's young. At that time she was 17, almost 18. And she knew nobody else. She knew nobody. She was in high school, out of town. So we went to town. About 3 days after we settled in the town, a man comes in and he says, and I was in the house with my father. I said, are you Otto Silverman? My father said, yes. Goes in his pocket, he takes out a piece of paper and hands it to my father. My father read that paper and he started crying.